Hello, Long Island GLBT. Let's hear it for David Kilnick for everything that he does. That was the best Judy Garland I have heard in a long time, by the way. You don't hear Judy Garland like that anymore. I have the honor of introducing my dear friend, Andrew Tobias, but before I do that, I just want to make a few quick points. Is Blake Claypack still here? Blake, you still here? Give Blake another big hand for what he did before. I want to tell you something. I was listening to Blake. I'm so proud to be a congressman, but I'm more proud to represent people like Blake. And he said something that really struck me. He said that he was struggling with whether to be an activist. And he said he thought maybe his mind and his insecurities were getting in the way of his being an activist. Blake, have you listened to some of my colleagues in the United States Congress? They don't let their minds or their insecurities stop them from saying the craziest things that you can imagine. So, Blake, be an activist and come to the United States Congress. Let me finish with my job, and then I will endorse you for the United States Congress. I want to mention two other people who are here. I am so proud to be a New Yorker because we in this state passed marriage equality. It never would have happened without the leadership and the tenacity and the dedication of people like Assemblyman Chuck Levine. Give him a big hand for being at the forefront of that effort. And I'm also proud because I get to go to the floor of the United States House of Representatives and tell my colleagues that my congressional district is the first congressional district in America to have a gay PTA. And that is because of Lori Scheinman and so many others. Give Lori Scheinman a big hand, and her husband Marty. I was on the floor of the House this afternoon and got a plane, came here, and I have to fly back to Washington first thing tomorrow morning for the White House Correspondents' Dinner. This is a much better gig than the White House Correspondents' Dinner, I have to tell you. I'd rather be here than there. And I just want to say something about where we are and why it's so important that we honor Andy Tobias. Today, we had a debate and we passed legislation in the House of Representatives regarding the cost of student loans. And the debate was, both sides of the aisle wanted to reduce the interest rate on student loans because we've got to make college more affordable if we're going to grow a middle class and be able to compete in the world. Now, my Republican colleagues said that they would pay for that reduction in interest rates on college loans by eliminating funding for preventive health care for women. And we said, Democrats said, look, we have a different idea. We think we can reduce the interest rate on college loans not by asking women to sacrifice their health care, but by asking big oil companies to sacrifice some of the subsidies that we pay them. And we lost. We lost that debate. They passed a bill that eliminates funding for preventive health care for women in order to fund affordable college education. You can have whatever view you want on that debate, but here's the point that I want to make. When we talk, if you listened to that debate and heard the bullying on the floor of the House, and the name-calling, and the screaming, and the virulence, and the vitriol, and the questioning of one another's patriotism based on this issue, I just want to make this point. You want to stop bullying in our schools? Stop it on C-SPAN. Stop it on the floor of the House of Representatives. Let's get back to being able to have respect and tolerance. We need the gay PTA in the United States House of Representatives to promote respect and dignity and tolerance and diversity. That's what we need. Those of us who fight for respect and tolerance and diversity and dignity, those of us who fight for civil rights, those of us who were part of the bill on the last day of the Democratic majority that repealed Don't Ask, Don't Tell, one of my most proudest days when we repealed that bill, we have been inspired by people like Andy Tobias. I met Andy when I became the chairman of the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee. And I went to him because he is a lifelong supporter of the values that bring us together in this room. He has been fighting for social justice. He has been fighting for unconditional fairness. He has been fighting for freedom. He demands a federal budget that is responsible but also moral. He is an acclaimed writer. He has broken boundaries. He has defied stereotypes. He has captured the hearts of the American people. But above all, Andy Tobias leads us in Congress and leads us nationally because he stands for principles, not when they're convenient, but because they are vital. When we talk about what happens in our schools and what Blake has been through, virtually every classroom in America, including classrooms on Long Island, begin the day when our young people recite the Pledge of Allegiance. One nation under God, with liberty and justice for all. Many of my colleagues in Congress forget the for all part. Andy Tobias believes that more important than a Pledge of Allegiance is allegiance to that pledge. And I am honored and privileged to present to you my friend and our colleague in activism and social justice, Andy Tobias. Give him a big hand.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Congressman. It's wonderful to be here. I love Long Island. I love Fire Island, which is a little bit of a sandbar off to the right there someplace. I agree. I totally agree. I'm going to be really brief because it's freezing in here, and we've been going on for a while, but I really wanted to come and tell you how much, first of all, this means to me, and also give you the perspective of someone who is, for the longest time, I was always the youngest one in the room. I would go around, you're only whatever, and you're already, my God, you're so young. And then on a Thursday, I forget which Thursday it was, but suddenly I'm always the oldest one in the room. So as the oldest one in the room tonight, I have a little perspective to bring. And I want to tell you that 46 years ago, I was the only one of 5,000 students at Harvard College who was gay. The only one out of 5,000. And I don't mean openly gay, I mean gay. As far as I knew, I may have been the only one on the planet. Somehow I was miswired. I was a kind of a regular guy, and I played very, very bad high school varsity sports. I was terrible, but it was a very small Jewish school, and I got a lot of varsity letters. I was terrible. But I was, I'm not putting down the Jews being one, but okay. So my point is, I was the only gay young man at Harvard College, and I was in a house, one of the dorms called Winthrop House, and there were a couple of faculty stars. Henry Kissinger actually was there at the time, and one of my friends had him as a faculty advisor. But all of us in Winthrop House had 4 or 5 resident tutors. These were the old junior faculty people who lived in the dorm to make sure we didn't burn anything down. They were like 28, 26, 30, old guys. And one of them was a junior professor or a teaching assistant in the government department, and he was so smart, and he was so funny. And people, the tables at the dining hall had room for like 8, but there would be 12, 14, 16 people crowded around this thing, especially the guys who were majoring in government, because they all wanted to do battle with him. And they would challenge him on everything, and he would destroy them, one after another, but so funny, people were falling on the floor laughing so hard, he was so funny. And we thought, this guy lives and breathes politics, he's got it, you know, what a tragedy that he is so messy, and he's got a Buddy Hackett speech impediment, and he can barely understand what I was saying, and he's got a cigar, and he's saying, motherfucker this, motherfucker that. You couldn't possibly put this man anywhere near a television set. And then, you know, we graduated, and he moved on, and I realized, he went to work for Mayor Kevin White, who was the mayor of Boston. And I said, of course, the smoke-filled back room. That makes sense. Perfect. He can have the cigar and he can be a make the deals behind the scenes and be the real power broker. But I didn't know what he was going to go on to do. I just knew he was hugely popular, and I was the only one at Harvard who was wired the way I was wired, until after about 2 years I realized, wait a second. This guy is looking at the same guys I'm looking at. There's somebody else here who has the same situation as me. Why does it have to be him? I mean, he's wonderful, but my roommates were so wonderful. Okay. As a lot of you have probably figured out, this young Harvard teaching associate became the chairman of the House Financial Services Committee, Barney Frank. And I am going to his wedding on July 7th. And by the way, he comes to Long Island every summer and stays with his partner Jim and stays at the house and the beach. And in that 46 years, where we went from being the only two people in the world, and we never talked about it because, of course, the whole point was you keep it completely secret. It was such a terrible, terrible, terrible thing to be. It was something you couldn't talk to your parents about, you couldn't talk to your... Really, I wouldn't have never gone to a psychiatrist because my whole goal in life was to have nobody know. And here we are, 46 years later, which seems like a long time, but boy, the last 3 years we have made so much progress. I won't say it's only because of who's president, but I don't think we would have made this progress under McCain and Palin. If you Google Obama LGBT accomplishments, you'll see a list that I keep. We're up to 71 things. Yes, don't ask, don't tell, hate crimes, hospital visitation, transgender inclusion, so many, but 71 different things. I got an email from a transgender friend of mine, because we now have transgender friends, some of us. It's the most amazing thing. When I was the only gay person at Harvard, there were I mean, who even knew the word transgender? Now, one of the appointees to the Democratic National Committee, who has risen in the ranks, is a wonderful woman named Babs Cyperstein, who is transgender, and she was elected to be co-chair of this and co-chair of that. The whole world is changing. So I got an email from one of these folks saying that by her calculation, as of yesterday or the day before, when the EEOC, the Equal Opportunity Employment Commission, passed this great new regulation that basically includes transgender people under Title VII of the 1964 Civil Rights Act, and it's a huge deal, and it only happened because of who President Obama appointed to the EEOC. She said that by her calculation, we are 62% of the way through our whole agenda. Now, I don't know if it's 62% or 46% or 53%, but we have basically gotten halfway there in this first term. And on November 6th, and by the way, I don't want anybody to, this wonderful organization that I'm so proud to get an honor from, I don't want you to lose your 501c3. This is a bipartisan comment. If you are on the other side of these issues and you don't want women to have a right to choose and you don't, fine, vote the other way. But one of three things is going to happen, and very possibly one of two things. Very possibly, on November 6th, we are going to hold the White House, we are going to hold the Senate, and we are going to take back the House of Representatives and give Steve Israel and Nancy Pelosi and a whole bunch of other folks their gavels back. Very possibly. I'm afraid equally possibly, or at least very possibly also, and it doesn't seem possible because how could America do this, but look what we did in 2000, look what we did in 2004. It's also possible that on November 6th, we will lose the White House, we will lose the Senate, we will not get the House of Representatives back, and forget all that, we will lose the Supreme Court for the next 20 years. I just want to say, because I don't want to talk too long, I know you wouldn't be here if you didn't care about these things. This next 6 months is so critical for not just the country and not just LGBT equality and all the great things that the network does. I believe it's critical for the habitability of the planet, for the human species. We've been building up to this for 5 billion years, and we are now at this astonishing point where anything is possible, but any sort of disaster is possible. We got to get onto the sustainable path in the next 10 or 20 years. I think we can do it, but it's not guaranteed. So thank you for your involvement. Not everybody comes out to these things. Thank you for your involvement. Thank you for this wonderful award. Vote. However you vote, vote.